There once lived a man named Thomas in a city where every day was exactly the same. He woke at 7 a.m., drank black coffee, caught the same bus, sat in the same seat, and worked from 9 to 6. At day's end, he'd return home, eat dinner in front of the TV, and sleep by 10:30 p.m. Thomas had done this for so long, he couldn't remember when it began. His days followed like identical pages in a book he read without paying attention to the words. Weeks passed like hours, months like days, and years like weeks. One day, something strange happened. On his way to work, a child dropped a red ball in the street. The ball rolled to Thomas's feet, and he bent down to pick it up. For an instant, holding that colorful sphere, he stopped, really stopped. He looked around and realized he didn't know where he was. Not because he was lost, but because he had never really looked at this street before. There was a bakery with the smell of fresh bread he passed daily without noticing. An elderly woman watered flowers on a balcony, smiling. Birds sang in a tree that had always been there but was invisible to him. How long has it been since I've seen any of this? Thomas wondered, still holding the ball. He returned the ball to the child, but something had changed. It was as if someone had turned on a light in a dark room where he'd lived for years. He arrived at work, but instead of sitting automatically, he stood for a moment. He looked out the window and saw the city's movement, people rushing as he had always rushed, all trapped in the same unconscious dance. That night, instead of turning on the TV, Thomas went for a walk. He discovered his neighbor played piano, a melody he'd always heard vaguely but never listened to. He passed a park that had existed 2 blocks from his house for over 10 years, but might as well have been built that day. In the following days, he began small experiments with himself. He drank his coffee while paying attention to the taste. He sat in different seats on the bus. He said good morning to the doorman and discovered his name was John, and he had 3 grandchildren. But the most surprising thing happened when he looked in the mirror and asked himself a question he hadn't asked in years. What do I really want? The answer didn't come immediately. It was buried under layers and layers of habits, expectations, and routines. But the question had been asked, and now it echoed inside him, like a stone thrown into a deep well. Thomas realized he had spent years living like a sleepwalker, following a script written by others, by society, by expectations, by fear of the unknown. But now, with each moment of mindful attention, each conscious choice, he was waking up. He didn't change everything at once. He continued working, continued his basic routine, but now each action was a choice, not an automation. Some days he still caught himself on autopilot, but the difference was that now he noticed when it happened. Days turned into weeks of this new awareness. Thomas felt more alive than he had in decades. Colors seemed brighter, conversations deeper, even mundane tasks carried meaning when done with intention. Then, one morning, something extraordinary happened. As Thomas reached for his black coffee, he paused. Instead, he made tea with honey. As he walked to the bus stop, he took a different route through the park. The morning sun filtered through the leaves, creating patterns of light he'd never seen before. But when he arrived at the bus stop, there was no bus, no people waiting, no traffic. The street was completely empty. Confused, Thomas walked back toward his neighborhood. Every house, every building, every street was exactly as it should be, except there were no people anywhere. No sounds except his own footsteps and the distant chirping of birds. He ran home, his heart pounding, burst through his front door and called out, but his voice echoed in the silence. He grabbed his phone, no signal, turned on the TV, static, the radio, nothing. Panicking, Thomas ran back outside and shouted into the empty street, "Hello! Anyone? Where is everyone?" Then he heard it, a child's laughter. He turned and saw her, the same little girl who had dropped the red ball. She was sitting on a bench in the park, bouncing the ball gently. "Where is everyone?" Thomas asked, approaching her. The little girl looked up, with ancient eyes that seemed far too old for her face. "They're still sleeping," she said simply. Sleeping? But it's morning. People should be— Not that kind of sleeping, she interrupted with a gentle smile. The kind of sleeping you were doing, the kind where you live but don't really live. Thomas stared at her, understanding beginning to dawn. Am I dead? The child shook her head. No. You're finally awake. This is what the world looks like when you're truly conscious, when you stop living automatically and start living intentionally. Most people never see it because they never wake up. But I want to go back. I want to see the people, to talk to John, to— You can, she said, standing up. But now you'll see them differently. You'll see who's awake and who's still dreaming. And maybe, if you're gentle, you can help wake a few of them up too. She handed him the red ball. This is for the next person who needs to wake up. Thomas blinked, and suddenly the world filled with sound again. People appeared on the street, cars resumed their flow, life returned to its familiar rhythm. But everything was different now. He could see it in people's faces. Some moved with intention and awareness, their eyes bright with presence. Others walked like shadows, lost in the trance of routine. And Thomas realized his real journey was just beginning. Did you know that the average person spends almost half of their waking hours thinking about something other than what they're doing? That's just one of the many startling signs we're living our lives on autopilot. Stay tuned to find out what's keeping you stuck and how to break free. Have you noticed how a day can vanish in a blur? Like you woke up, went through your routine, and suddenly it's bedtime again. It feels like playing back the same recording, like one day melting into the next. You pour your morning coffee without thinking, scroll through your phone between tasks, and somehow find yourself at the end of the week, wondering where all that time went. This is the ordinary world of autopilot living, where actions flow from habit rather than choice. Picture a typical morning. You open your eyes, check your notifications before even sitting up, stumble toward the kitchen, and grab whatever you normally eat. Maybe you say, "Good morning," to the people in your house, but your mind? It's already replaying yesterday's concerns or rehearsing for today's chaos. Familiar patterns guide you through dressing, commuting, maybe even working. If you've ever wondered, how did I even get here? While parking your car or walking down a hallway, you're not alone. This is life lived unconsciously, a series of automatic responses to a world we barely take in. At first glance, it might not seem like a big deal. After all, habits make life easier. Repeating routines saves us energy. Our brain uses autopilot mode as a survival strategy, freeing up focus for the unexpected. But here's the catch. While conserving energy is helpful for survival, it dulls our experience of living. Decisions are made without thought, and moments pass unnoticed. When autopilot extends beyond basic tasks, it can create a hollow feeling, as though we're merely existing instead of actively participating in our own lives. Take a moment to think about an instance when you said yes to something you didn't actually want to do. Maybe you agreed out of habit, or because you couldn't see an alternative in that split second. Or maybe you were so distracted by everything else going on in your head that people's expectations influenced you more than your own desires. This isn't just a rare occurrence. It's a symptom of something deeper. Living on autopilot, we end up disconnected not only from our surroundings but also from ourselves. Over time, this disconnect chips away at our goals, our pleasure, even our relationships. Even more concerning is how easily autopilot mode links to the idea of social hypnosis. The world around us plays its own role in keeping us asleep. Societal norms, cultural expectations, and role models all shape who we think we should be. We follow these scripts without questioning and gradually slip into identities crafted by forces outside ourselves. The roles we fit into, employee, friend, parent, partner, are useful. But when we cling to them for all our choices, our individuality gets lost. It's subtle and pervasive, And before you know it, your life may not feel like it's yours anymore. What does the toll of this unconscious living look like? You might set big goals at the start of the year, only to find yourself abandoning them by March. Relationships can lose depth as automatic phrases like, "I'm fine, you?" replace genuine communication. Even leisure time becomes full of avoidance, lost to endless binge-watching or scrolling. That nagging feeling that something, somewhere, might be missing could just be your mind trying to wake you up. But getting stuck in these repeated patterns isn't the end of the story. The most important realization is this: recognizing autopilot is the first crack in its hold over you. Noticing how often you're zoned out or following routines without question is already the first step in shifting out of this sleep-like state. Awareness is like turning on a light in a dim room. You start to see things for what they are, and you realize that breaking free is possible. So, let me ask you, what's keeping you stuck in autopilot? What's stopping you from living each day with intention? What if the life you're living right now isn't the one you're truly meant to live? That slight uneasiness, that quiet sense that something is missing, it's not unusual. In fact, many people feel this vague pull towards something deeper. Maybe it comes as restlessness on a Sunday afternoon, or as a nagging question during a quiet moment. Is this really it? This is the call to adventure, the subtle nudge that there's more than the routine you've been moving through. And yet, instead of answering it, most people let it drown beneath the noise of daily life. Why? Because staying where we are feels safer. The patterns we know are comfortable, even if they're not necessarily fulfilling. Change has a way of unsettling us. It exposes unfamiliar territory, asks us to let go of control, and sometimes forces us to question parts of ourselves we've been avoiding. The truth is, reflecting on your own life can be uncomfortable. Distractions like work, obligations, or even endless streams of entertainment make it easy to look away. But if we ignore that uneasy feeling for too long, it often grows into frustration or even apathy. This is where self-observation enters the picture. It's like a mentor quietly offering you a way forward. But what is self-observation exactly? It's the practice of simply noticing your thoughts, feelings, and habits without trying to fix or judge them. Think of it as holding up a mirror to your inner world, allowing you to see yourself more clearly. Your patterns, the ones you think are just who you are, become visible in a new way. For instance, you might notice that every time you feel nervous, you reflexively reach for your phone, or that your anger in conversations isn't really about the topic at hand, but stems from old frustrations you rarely acknowledge. Mindfulness plays a central role here. If you're always rushing from task to task, you don't leave room to pay attention to what's happening inside. Mindfulness asks you to pause and let go of constant doing. As a result, it creates space for true awareness. Laura C. Meyer describes this idea well, saying, "Mindfulness begins with letting go of the usual doing in order to make space for attention. It's in this space that you start to see where you're operating out of habit instead of choice." But here's the challenge. Self-observation takes effort. You need to be honest with yourself, even when it's not flattering or comfortable. It requires sitting with emotions you'd rather avoid, and facing questions about the habits you cling to. For example, asking yourself, why do I always say yes to things that drain me? Or, what belief is driving my reaction right now? Might reveal truths you've overlooked. It's not about judging yourself for these patterns, but understanding them. This process, though challenging, is incredibly freeing because once you're aware, you can make intentional changes. Even small moments of self-observation can make a difference. For instance, noticing how you feel while stuck in traffic instead of numbing out with music could be the starting point of a larger shift. Suddenly, emotional reactions that used to control you begin to loosen their grip. You stop functioning as a passenger in your own life and start feeling like the driver again. With each moment of mindfulness, the world seems to open up in subtle but profound ways. So think about this. What if every repetitive cycle you've been trapped in, the endless race from one task to the next, could be broken by just paying attention? The opportunity to change is always there. It begins with the simple act of watching yourself, of remembering that the present moment holds more potential than we usually give it credit for. What if you could snap out of autopilot with just one small, deliberate choice? Imagine your day as a blurred sequence, all tasks flowing together without much thought. Now, imagine breaking that flow, not with a massive life overhaul, but with a small shift that jolts you into the present moment. These moments are what some call shocks, and they're designed to wake you up. A shock is any intentional action that disrupts a habitual pattern, forcing you out of your mind's autopilot mode and into active awareness. But why are these disruptions so critical? It all traces back to how the brain works. Your mind is efficient. It likes saving energy by turning repeated tasks into routines. This efficiency is managed largely by something neuroscientists call the default mode network, or DMN. It's active when your mind is wandering, often replaying the past or worrying about the future. While it helps process and store memories, too much activity in the DMN can leave you detached from the present moment, trapped in cycles of overthinking and shallow living. Without interruptions, the brain's default is to stay here, recycling the same mental patterns. This is where shocks come in. They aren't meant to interrupt for the sake of chaos, but to wake you up just enough to see the present clearly. Consider something as simple as taking a different route home from work. That small choice could make you notice things you've never seen before: an old tree, a colorful storefront, maybe even a spectacular sunset that was always there but hidden by routine. Or imagine you've spent weeks saying yes to plans you didn't really want. A shock might be pausing before the next request and choosing to say no for a change. That single word could create space in your day and start breaking a cycle of obligation-driven habits. Let's picture someone named Alex who's caught in the same weekly routine: rush to work, eat lunch on the go, scroll through social media, and collapse into bed, ready to repeat it all. One day, on a whim, Alex takes a path through a nearby park on the way home. Instead of the usual blur of sliding doors and neon lights, Alex notices birds chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze, and pets being walked. It's a small moment, but it shifts something. This tiny change pulls Alex out of mental autopilot and back into the present. That's the power of a shock. It doesn't need to flip your entire world upside down. It only needs to create a moment of awareness. These disruptions don't just wake you up for a fleeting second. They start to create space for self-awareness. Once you break a pattern, you can step back and ask, why do I keep doing this? Making even one conscious choice has ripple effects. For example, focusing fully on a single task, like eating a meal without distractions, invites intention into an otherwise mindless moment. That attention then spills over onto other aspects of life. Being present in one area gives you the tools to be present in others. A useful practice to pair with these shocks is remembering yourself throughout the day. This doesn't mean overthinking or creating long mental checklists. It's simpler than that. Take a second to pause, breathe, feel your surroundings. Are you acting out of habit, or are you choosing your actions? These small moments of reflection are like breadcrumbs that lead you back to your true intentions. When you start following them, the loop of unconscious living begins to break. Now think about this. How different would your life feel if every choice you made came from awareness? If the routines you lived weren't just inherited or automated, but intentional? With each shock, you take one step closer to reclaiming those choices. It's not about perfection, it's about progress, one mindful moment at a time. So, are you ready to disrupt the patterns? To wake up, even for a moment, and see what's here? Living on autopilot means moving through life without ever truly engaging with it. It's a passive existence where moments slip by unnoticed. But here's the thing, you have the power to wake up. As Swami Kripalu said, the highest spiritual practice is self-observation without judgment. By watching your thoughts and actions without criticism, you allow space for change and growth. So, take one small step today. Pause, notice what you're doing, and ask, is this a choice or a habit? That single moment of awareness can spark something bigger. After all, every meaningful journey begins with one conscious breath.